Retirement was supposed to be the reward for a lifetime of work, yet, for many people, it quietly becomes a time of worry. Rising prices, shrinking savings, and constant uncertainty can turn what should be peaceful years into stressful ones. I felt that pressure myself. I realized something had to change, not someday, but now. The urgent truth is this: many retirees are spending out of habit, not intention, and it is slowly stealing their peace. But here is what I learned through experience. Living better does not require more money. It requires better choices. The happiest retirees quietly spend less because they understand what truly matters. And once you understand that, everything begins to change. 1. Learning the difference between want and need. When I first entered retirement, I thought the most important decisions were already behind me. I had worked hard, saved what I could, and figured I would finally have the freedom to enjoy the things I always postponed. I imagined relaxing days, hobbies I never had time for, and maybe a few small luxuries. But what surprised me the most was not how free I felt, but how quickly that freedom could become a trap, especially when it came to money. You see, during my working years, I spent more than I ever admitted. A quick coffee here, another lunch out there. I bought things to reward myself for long days, or to distract myself from stress. When I retired, that habit did not retire with me. At first, it felt like I deserved it. After all, I had earned this time. But month by month, I saw the savings I had carefully built begin to shrink. Not because of emergencies. Just from everyday spending, that added up faster than I expected. I started to ask myself, why am I buying this? Do I actually need it? Or do I just want it? That question changed everything. It was not easy at first. I had to sit with a lot of uncomfortable feelings. Sometimes I realized I was shopping because I was bored. Other times, it was to fill silence. There were moments I spent money to feel in control, especially when other parts of life felt uncertain. But slowly, as I became more honest with myself, I started to see a pattern, and more importantly, I began to change it. I looked around my home and saw all the things I had purchased without real thought. Drawers full of gadgets I never used, clothes with tags still on, books I meant to read but never opened. I began to donate what I did not use, give things away, clear space. And here is what I discovered. I did not feel deprived. I felt lighter. When I separated my wants from my needs, I began to make more meaningful choices. I found that a simple home-cooked meal, eaten slowly and without distraction, brought more satisfaction than any expensive night out. A handwritten letter from my granddaughter meant more to me than any new piece of technology. A walk in the park with a friend was more fulfilling than browsing online stores looking for something to buy. Learning this difference gave me back control, not just over my spending, but over how I felt each day. I was no longer chasing after the next thing to make me happy. I was learning how to be content with what I had, and that, I believe, is one of the greatest forms of freedom in retirement. 2. Choosing where peace lives, not where status shines. For many years, my home was a symbol of what I had worked for. It was where my children grew up, where holidays were celebrated, and where the walls held memories only I could see. But after retirement, and especially after my children had started lives of their own, the house began to feel too large, too quiet, and frankly, too expensive for what I truly needed. The maintenance never stopped. The heating and cooling bills made me raise my eyebrows every month. Rooms sat unused for weeks. I realized I was paying to hold on to space that was no longer serving me, but still I hesitated. Moving felt like letting go of a part of myself. It was not an easy decision. Then one day, I sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking on the wall. I looked around and asked myself a simple question. Who am I holding on to this for? That question led to a search. not just for a new house, but for a new kind of life. I began looking into smaller communities, towns where people smiled at each other, where life moved slower, and where the cost of living matched my new reality. After months of consideration, I found a modest home in a quiet neighborhood, just far enough from the city. There was no gate, no status symbol in the driveway, but from the moment I stepped through the front door, I felt something I had not felt in years: peace. I chose peace over prestige, function over form. I no longer needed the big dining room, the second bathroom no one used, or the lawn that took hours to maintain. I needed comfort, safety, a manageable space where everything had a place and nothing felt overwhelming. The funny thing is, I thought I would miss what I left behind, but what I gained, lower stress, lower costs, and a greater sense of control, was worth far more. My neighbors are kind. We check in on one another. I walk to the grocery store, the library, and the post office. There is a park nearby where I sit in the mornings with my coffee. That quiet, that slowness, is something I never knew I craved. In retirement, where you live matters, not just for your wallet, but for your well-being. I used to chase places that made me look successful. Now I look for places that make me feel at peace. That is the real success. 3. Simplicity is not sacrifice. There was a time when I believed that more meant better. More clothes meant more options. More gadgets meant more convenience. More rooms in a house meant more comfort. But after years of living that way, and after finally slowing down in retirement, I discovered something I never expected. More often led to more stress, not more happiness. The turning point came slowly. It was not a dramatic moment, just a gradual realization that my life was too full of things and too empty of space. My closets were packed. My kitchen cabinets overflowed. Every surface in my home held something: a decoration, a device, a reminder of a purchase made on impulse. Yet despite all this, I did not feel satisfied. I felt cluttered, inside and out. So I began to simplify, not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel lighter. I started with one drawer, then one shelf, then one room. I asked myself, do I use this? Does this bring value to my life? And if the answer was no, I let it go. I donated, gifted, or recycled what no longer fit the life I wanted to live. What surprised me most was not how much I had, but how little I needed. And in that discovery, I found a new kind of joy. Not the kind that comes from buying something new, but the kind that comes from being surrounded only by what you love and what serves a purpose. Simplicity also showed up in how I spent my time. I no longer felt the need to keep my calendar full. I learned to enjoy slow mornings, simple meals, and conversations that were not rushed. I no longer felt guilty for resting. In fact, rest became sacred. Living simply has made my life feel richer. I may own fewer things, but I now have more space for peace, more time for people, and more clarity about what truly matters. I stopped measuring success by how much I had. I began measuring it by how light I felt when I woke up and how grateful I felt when I went to bed. Simplicity to me is not a lack. It is a gift of freedom, awareness, and presence. And in retirement, that gift is more valuable than anything I could buy. 4. Taking advantage of what is already free. One of the most valuable lessons I learned in retirement was this: the best things in life really are free, or at the very least, already available to you if you know where to look. When I first left the working world, I thought I needed to replace the activities I used to pay for, concerts, restaurants, gym memberships, shopping trips, with new expensive hobbies. I believed staying busy meant spending money, but I was wrong. It started with a visit to the local library. I had not stepped inside one in years. I went in to pick up a book someone had recommended, and I walked out with more than reading material. There was a bulletin board by the entrance filled with flyers, free movie nights, book clubs, educational talks, even a Tai Chi class for older adults taught every Thursday morning. That library became a gateway to a world I had forgotten existed. I began showing up to those classes, joining discussion groups, attending lectures. The people I met were kind, thoughtful, and often going through the same phase of life. We shared stories, ideas, and sometimes just quiet company. These connections cost me nothing, but gave me so much. Soon, I discovered even more. The community center in town had free fitness programs for seniors. The church nearby held potluck dinners twice a month where anyone was welcome. The local park offered guided walks, birdwatching meetups, and even seasonal gardening events. Every one of these opportunities helped me feel more connected, more active, and more alive, and none of them required spending a single dollar. I also found joy in using what I already had at home. Instead of subscribing to more television services, I revisited old DVDs and listened to music I had collected over the years. I began writing letters to friends, reading the newspaper slowly each morning, and cooking meals from simple ingredients in my pantry. These small actions reminded me that I already had enough. I just had to see it differently. There is something deeply satisfying about living fully without spending constantly. I never feel like I am missing out. On the contrary, I feel like I have rediscovered a richness that cannot be bought. It is in the laughter of neighbors during a game night, the quiet concentration in a library room, or the warm hello from someone who remembers your name. Retirement is not about doing less. It is about doing what matters. And much of what matters is already available, waiting for us to notice. 5. Doing things yourself and loving it. There was a time in my life when I believed convenience was the goal. If someone else could do it faster, I paid them. If there was a gadget to make a task easier, I bought it. If food could be delivered to my door instead of cooked, I ordered it. And for years, I never questioned that rhythm. But after I retired, that mindset began to shift. At first, it was out of necessity. I was looking for ways to stretch my budget, and so I started doing more on my own. I began cooking at home again, not just heating things up, but really cooking. I chopped vegetables, seasoned stews, and baked bread. I had not done that in years. I thought I would find it tiring or boring, but instead, I found it calming, even joyful. I remembered old recipes my mother used to make. I tried new ones I found at the library. I invited my grandchildren over and taught them how to make pancakes from scratch. There was something deeply satisfying about creating something with my own hands and then sharing it with someone I loved. It did not just save money. It gave me something money could never buy, a sense of usefulness, creativity, and pride. From there, it grew. A leaky faucet? I watched a few videos and fixed it myself. The garden bed in the backyard? I dug it out, planted herbs, and now I pick fresh mint every morning for my tea. I started sewing small tears in clothing, mending things, instead of replacing them. It felt good. Not because I had to do it, but because I chose to. And I could. Doing things yourself in retirement is not about returning to old-fashioned ways out of stubbornness. It is about reclaiming your ability to care for your own life. It is about trusting that you are still capable, still useful, and still creative. Every time I make something with my own hands, whether it is a loaf of bread or a repaired chair, I feel a little more connected to the world around me. It is not always perfect. Sometimes I burn the crust or make a crooked cut, but perfection is not the point. Presence is. And presence, I have learned, is the real gift of retirement. You spend so many years working hard for others, doing what is expected. Now you get to choose how you spend your time. When you do things yourself, even small things, you slow down, you pay attention, and in that quiet attention, you find meaning, you find joy. 6. Choosing health over convenience. During my working years, Health was something I often put off. There was always a meeting, a deadline, or some reason to skip a walk or grab fast food on the way home. I knew I should take better care of myself, but I always thought I would have more time later. Retirement, I told myself, would be when I finally focused on my health. But when retirement came, I noticed something troubling. I had the time, yes, but the habits I had built over decades were still there. I still reached for quick meals. I still sat for long periods. I still found excuses. And slowly, I began to realize that if I wanted to truly enjoy this new chapter, I could not keep living the same way. My health was not just important, it was urgent. I did not join a fancy gym. I did not hire a personal trainer. What I did was simpler and, honestly, more sustainable. I started walking. Every morning I put on my shoes and walked around the neighborhood. At first, it was slow and sometimes it hurt, but I kept going. I began to notice the flowers blooming, the way the sunlight hit the trees, the neighbors who waved from their porches. Walking became more than exercise. It became meditation. I also started cooking more meals at home with real ingredients: vegetables, grains, fruit, water. Nothing complicated, nothing expensive. I discovered how delicious food can be when you prepare it with care. My body began to feel lighter. My mind clearer. I slept better. I laughed more. I stopped thinking of health as something I had to chase and started seeing it as something I could cultivate every day in small choices. I drank more water. I stretched in the mornings. I rested when I needed to. I stopped comparing myself to how I looked or felt 20 years ago. I began to appreciate how strong I still was, how capable my body remained when I treated it with kindness. What surprised me most was that these changes did not cost me money. They saved it. Fewer visits to the doctor, fewer medications, fewer days spent feeling tired or sluggish. I realized that investing in my health did not require a big budget. It required intention. You cannot buy health. You can only build it one small decision at a time. And in retirement, you finally have the time to do it. The choice is yours. I made mine, and I have never regretted it. 7. Prioritizing people, not purchases. There was a point in my life when I believed that giving meant buying. Gifts for birthdays, big meals for holidays, new things to show I cared. I worked hard so I could provide, and providing often meant purchasing. But over the years, I started to notice something. The moments my family remembered, the ones they talked about years later, were never the things I bought. They were the times I was present. Since retiring, I have come to see relationships with a clearer lens. Without the busyness of work, I had more space to reach out, to connect, to listen. I began calling friends more often, even just to check in. I invited my grandchildren over for breakfast on weekends. I sat with my son in the garage as he fixed his car. Not saying much, just being there. And somehow, those quiet moments brought us closer than any expensive gift ever did. You see, people do not want our money. They want our presence. They want to feel seen, heard, valued. And those things cannot be bought. They require time, attention, and patience. 3 things retirement has given me in abundance. One afternoon, my neighbor came by. His wife had recently passed, and he just wanted company. We sat on the porch and watched the sky change colors. We did not talk much. He thanked me before he left, and I realized that my time, freely given, had meant more to him than anything else I could have offered. That is when I truly understood that in this chapter of life, the richest investment we can make is in our relationships. Not through things, but through time, through kindness, through listening, through showing up. I have also found that when you stop focusing on what you can buy, you start noticing the people around you more. You remember birthdays without reminders. You bring soup when someone is sick. You ask about their family and really listen to the answer. These simple acts of care build something lasting. And the beauty is, it works both ways. When you prioritize people, they often return that care tenfold, not in gifts, but in presence, in support, in shared joy. That, to me, is wealth. That is abundance. In the end, no one will remember how much you spent, but they will remember how much you cared. And in retirement, we finally have the chance to care deeply, freely, and fully. That is a gift I treasure every single day. 8. Practicing gratitude every single day. Some mornings, I wake up before the sun rises. I sit by the same window holding the same cup of coffee, and I just watch. Sometimes it is the birds that get my attention. Sometimes it is the breeze through the trees. And sometimes it is just the quiet. That quiet used to feel lonely. Now it feels like peace. As I moved further into retirement, I began to notice that my happiness had very little to do with what I had, and everything to do with how I saw what I had. I could have a simple breakfast and feel deeply fulfilled. I could walk the same path in the park and discover something new. I could sit in silence and feel more alive than I ever did in a crowded room. The shift came when I started practicing gratitude, not as a big dramatic change, but as a small habit. Every day I take a moment, just one, and I name 3 things I am thankful for. Some days it is easy. I wake up without pain. I hear from my daughter, the soup turns out just right. Other days it is harder. Maybe the weather is gloomy or I am feeling tired. But even then I find something: the roof over my head, the warmth of a blanket, the memory of someone I love. Gratitude changed how I see everything. A quiet afternoon is no longer empty. It is spacious. A simple meal is no longer plain. It is nourishing. A short visit from a friend is no longer small. It is precious. What is powerful about gratitude is that it multiplies joy. The more you notice what is good, the more goodness you seem to find. It also softens the hard moments. When life feels heavy, gratitude reminds you that you are still standing, still breathing, still here. That alone is worth honoring. I do not write these things down in a journal. I simply speak them quietly, sometimes only in my mind, but over time, they have shaped my heart. I worry less. I compare less. I need less, because I see more. Gratitude does not cost a thing, and yet it might be the most valuable practice I have ever embraced. It has taught me that a happy life is not built from what you gather, but from how you see what you already hold. And in this chapter of life where time feels slower and the days more tender, gratitude has become my steady companion. It walks with me, it comforts me, and it reminds me every single day that less truly can be more if your heart is full. A quiet, happier life is within reach. I used to think happiness in retirement came from planning everything just right, saving enough, owning the right things, living in the right place. And yes, those things matter. But they are not the heart of it. I have come to see that real happiness comes from how you live, not just what you have. And sometimes it comes from living a little differently than the world expects. I spend less now than I did when I was working. I do not travel far, shop often, or chase new experiences just to stay busy. But I live better because I live slower, more intentionally, more gratefully. I understand what matters to me, and I build my days around that. I no longer feel the pressure to prove anything. I do not feel behind. I do not feel like I am missing out, because I have discovered that peace is not something you find in a store or a bank account. It is something you grow one small choice at a time. If you are in retirement or nearing it and you feel uncertain, let me tell you this: you do not need more to be happy. You just need to notice more, to slow down, to spend with purpose, to connect with people who matter, to take care of your body, your spirit, and your space. That is the quiet path many of us walk now, and we are happier for it It is not loud, it is not flashy, but it is real. And it is possible for you too. So wherever you are in this journey, I hope you take a deep breath, look around, and see the good that is already here. That might just be the beginning of something beautiful. Thank you for sharing this time with me. If this message brought you comfort or clarity, I hope you will pass it along to someone who needs it. Because a peaceful, meaningful retirement is not just a dream. It can be a reality. One simple, quiet step at a time.